Good day to you,
Hi.
madam.
Oh, good day. Good day, good day.
Okay, so here's the deal. I'm going to be annoying about my audio one more time.
I was gonna text you.
You
Yeah,
hear that?
I do.
Guys, we're live. We're
We're
doing
live.
it live.
We're doing it live.
We really are. It's true. Um, so today,
So,
so, uh,
um,
welcome everybody.
welcome.
Glad to have you with us. We're going to be talking about emotional contamination OCD today.
Mm.
And today's episode of Purely OCD is sponsored by NOCD. So just a quick, plug for them. If you're looking for OCD therapy, therapy for OCD. Wait, take two. Ready?
Hold on. If you're looking
Oh dear.
for affordable,
Yes.
accessible,
Yes. Convenient therapy for OCD. At NoCD, you can do live video sessions with a licensed therapist, and between sessions, you can get support from NOCD's self-help tools and peer support community. Take the first step toward getting better by going to www.nocd.com and book a free call. Sorry for my inability to speak.
hey, we're all learning still. We're all learning. Well
Yes.
done. You nailed it.
Thank you. Is that a self five
That was, I'm gonna give
situation?
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, so that's exciting. We got sponsored by somebody that's pretty reputable. And also, I would like to say something about them is that I've
Please.
had a lot of my clients use the app originally, right
Mhm.
before they had actual therapists involved in every state. And it was really quite helpful. Like you can build your own exposure log, and it's a tool I often use for clients who maybe can't afford treatment individually.
Yeah.
It's a good, like a self-help book, but an app.
Well, and then now they have therapists.
Therapy,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
good
Um,
ones. So
yeah, solid ones. So, anyway, that's all good. And today, shall we get into this is for education purposes only, by the way, just in case you were
just,
wondering.
just FYI,
After the Y to the Izzle,
this is education only and not a replacement for therapy.
that is
Um,
accurate.
what is it?
Yeah. So, with all of that said, today we're taking a deep dive into emotional contamination OCD.
Yay.
Yay!
Uh,
Whee!
wee. So going to the concentric circles again.
Mm-hmm.
This one's gonna feel like it's dipping into every flavor.
I was actually thinking about that this morning, and I was thinking especially about how anxiety can contaminate things for people with OCD. For example, you could have any flavor of OCD, right? All of these concentric circles, it's going to look like a big flower, right? We've got like our emotional contamination, and then we got all of the other ones around it, because the reality is that if you have anxiety, oftentimes you will have a fear that you'll never not have your anxiety thoughts. And if you have a place or a person that's associated with those thoughts, then that can be triggering too in this sort of emotional contamination kind of way.
Yes. Can you give a concrete example just so people, I know what you're
Yes.
talking about, but
Yep. No, that's great. So let's say I have harm OCD and I am living in a certain area of town when I have harm OCD, right? And it's really bad. And so a lot of places in that area of town, I start to associate with that period of my life. So then let's say that I've gotten a lot of recovery around my harm OCD, but I live somewhere else now. And not far away though. This is a very specific example, but like not too far away. But so I might go back to that area of town, but I might avoid certain places because I'm afraid that I'll be triggered, because I'm afraid that I'm going to become anxious all over again, because it's like that area is contaminated with my emotional experience.
exactly. Absolutely. So there you go.
So in terms of obsessions, that's one of them, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm going
That's
to
one of
get this
them.
emotional ugh on me.
My past emotional on me. Another one.
So good.
Sorry,
Just
I'm
I'm going to get it
so
all over
uncomfortable.
me. are you emotionally contaminated right now,
I
Kelly?
am, no, I'm just, my hip hurts. But okay, coming back to the
Coming
present
back,
moment
present
is,
moment.
okay. Um, I almost said something really snarky, but I'm not gonna,
Okay.
about something else. Not to you, directed at something else. Okay. Anywho,
Anywho.
a common one that I've seen is, and most of us, when we talk about emotional contamination, what we talk about typically is this fear that we're going to take on another person's traits,
Mm-hmm.
or just become that person. So there's a lot of magical thinking involved with this obsession in particular. So it's, if I talk to that person, or if I have this thought about that person, I am now that person.
Right.
So
Yep. So
that's a really
people,
generic version.
no, that's such a good example, though. I actually saw some siblings who one of them had it for the other one, and like
Oh,
the
how
sense of like,
interesting.
ooh, I don't want to get
That makes
close to the
sense though, right? Like they don't
turn
want
into
to give.
them.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I think that
Yeah.
variation certainly is, there's a lot of emotional or yeah, magical thinking is what I was thinking. I also think that it tends to come up in the context of having a bad emotional experience outside of the context of OCD. So, for instance, you get in an argument with somebody, or maybe you yell at your kids, and
Mm,
you have, oh God, who does that? Um,
nobody.
don't yell at your children, except for that happens. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, uh, you yell at your kids, and you're now, let's say you're in a certain place, or you're wearing certain clothing, or you're, I don't know, holding something. Maybe now that object, or that place, or that piece of clothing is contaminated, and it's anxiety provoking to wear it, not only because it just feels off, but because it's going to bring about the memory over and over and over again. So this fear of like, I don't want to keep thinking about this, so I'm not going to wear that.
Right.
Or
Exactly.
yeah, yep.
Um, I've seen this in particular around, actually two of my past clients who had lost parents.
Okay.
And it's just interesting. Like now that I'm thinking about it, that the two of them both had emotional contamination, and it was very much related around the parents and death, but
Hmm.
that could just totally be random. It was just going back to that area,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
not touching their items for fear of, and really, not becoming them, but just not dying.
Hmm. That's interesting. It's almost where emotional contamination and real contamination meet.
Neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had
Like,
two.
yeah, that is really interesting. I
Yeah.
actually, one of the things that I'm thinking about too is there's, I think it's an article on IOCDF, and it's about classical and operant conditioning.
Mm.
And they talk about how initially, if, let's say you have an aunt who has cancer, and your aunt with cancer sits in a particular chair, and you're afraid, you might have health anxiety around, what if I get cancer, that you might not sit in that chair, not though it's, but again,
It
this
is.
is
It's where it
more,
meets. Yeah.
it's because it's not, and you can rationally realize that you're not going to get cancer from a
It's not
chair.
contagious, right?
No, but there is a sense of like, oh no, now I have it on me, now I have that experience on me, and or any variant of that.
Which can also be kind of like, what if I hear somebody else's OCD theme, right?
Hmm.
And you know, I get, that's my new theme.
Yeah.
Well, it's not really contagious.
No.
You just
No,
have
it's,
OCD.
yeah.
Oh, you still have OCD though.
And look, if you're gonna try and not have a thought, it's gonna make it worse. Because that's
Right?
the
It
only
becomes
problem.
its own obsession, is what happens.
Yes, that you're going to pick up another obsession.
Hmm.
Man, it's like the inception of mental illness. That's what OCD is.
And oftentimes with this, well, not oftentimes, but sometimes this can happen where the therapist can become contaminated. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
So client shares something that's triggering to them, and now they've associated, like Lauren was saying earlier, therapist as now a contaminant, or they've been cross-contaminated.
Yep.
So
Yep.
can be a
Absolutely.
huge roadblock to treatment.
Yep. I don't know if this falls into contamination or if it falls into the category of emotional contamination. Again, it feels like it's this sort of
Yeah.
meeting point, but this person, I've worked with people who associated uh, like garbage with shoes. And so
Mm-hmm.
that their shoes were contaminated and things that got close to their shoes, right? Like it's sort of the same. It feels emotional.
Sorry, I totally got distracted. Say that again, that garbage is associated with their shoes because touching.
Right. And then but now they're kind of like contaminated, but not like it's more of an icky feeling. Again, it's more like it's sort of a convergence of all of them, right? It feels more like
Like they've become, yeah, that's more, I would say,
that's more
it's leaning
contamination.
more near contamination.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
No,
but you're
that's fair.
right. It starts to tip, and it's think about it too. Like in terms of harm stuff, is like if you watch a horror film and you go, oh my gosh, I just watched that, and now you start picking up on the traits of that individual who's a sociopath or a psychopath, and then you start checking for that or asking for reassurance for it. So
Yeah.
it can dip into every single pretty
Type of
much.
theme. Yeah.
Yeah, like oh, I had a thought that I just drove my car into the wall. It's like, oh, well, now that's going to happen, right? That's
Right.
that.
That's
Don't
the
think
fear.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's
So,
the
by the way,
obsessions.
if I
Yeah.
may, just because I saw somebody ask about ERP, we will be getting to that. And if you want to submit a question, you can just click on that nice little question mark box to the right of the comment box, and we'll be happy to address it at the end if we have time.
Well done, friend.
Thanks, friend. Yeah, so compulsions,
So
avoidance.
compulsions, big time, big
Yeah,
time.
I don't want to go there. I don't want to touch that. I don't want to be with that person. None of it.
Yeah, I don't want to have that avoidance of thoughts, right?
Yeah,
Um,
make it go away.
yeah, and this can get really elaborate. Again, it's one of those themes that just can spread like wildfire
Hmm.
quickly. Um, I think because of the, not that they all can, but I think you and I had discussed this not that long ago off camera,
Hmm.
that emotional contamination can have, it's just the more just magical thinking gets in the
Mm-hmm.
way, and
Yep.
it can be really debilitating. Um,
Well, and it can coincide with like poor insight, I think is what we're
right,
saying. So for anyone who's out there, OCD diagnosis is on a continuum with better, like great, good, fair, and poor insight. And so most people are aware to some degree, however, that their thoughts are a little bit
skewed more,
outlandish.
yeah,
Right, but as you go further toward the poorer insight, you're more fused with your thoughts from
yeah,
a act perspective. So it can be more challenging in that case. And you're right. I
yes,
think that this particular form of OCD, because it is magical by its very essence, right? The idea that you can catch an emotion, the idea that you can catch somebody else's personality, all of these ideas they're pretty mystical, right? It's like I'm gonna go and then you're gonna become me,
yeah,
right? Like it's like a Freaky Friday kind of situation.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exposures are fun with this one.
Yeah.
Once we get willingness on board.
Yes.
But yeah, that's takes some finesse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, avoidance big time because it's, avoidance of anybody who even resembles them or a word that is inside of their name. You know what I mean? Like it can get really,
It can get
really,
pervasive.
yes. Um, Shows that remind them of that certain trait.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
Gosh, I
But
feel like I'm not sure if this is right, but I think that this is the fear of like becoming blind or something. I thought I read that somewhere. I haven't had that
hmm,
before
I haven't
in my
either.
casework. or some type of debilitating. I mean, you mentioned the health, so I think that I've read stories of it. I just never treated it like that.
Yeah. Well, I think to your point as well that there is so much overlap and they're all arbitrary categories like we talk
Yeah,
about
it's
anyway.
OCD.
Yeah. So it's almost like one of the things I was thinking of a little bit earlier is that you could almost put some of the secret and what's the
Yeah.
type of the sort of thinking around that into this category. Like I'm going to have a thought and that's going to contaminate my mind space.
Mhm.
What is the type of thinking that I'm thinking about? Secret
Um,
law of
Positive
attraction.
psychology. Yeah, positive
Yeah.
psychology stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or law of attraction. Thank you.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Um,
other compulsions.
Lots of mental ritualizations, right? Like
Hmm.
replacing the good thought with the bad thought, the good name with the bad name,
Hmm.
um,
Replaying.
replaying.
Yep. To neutralize, like going backwards.
Yeah. I've
But
seen it
yeah.
come out so many different ways, though. It could just be like going through a door frame while having the thought of the person or the traits, and then, oh, got to undo it by going back through the door frame.
Yep.
So when you leave my office, you're going to do it once and you're going to hold that
Yeah.
person in your head.
On purpose.
You're going to do awesome.
You're gonna do so good. Well, question mark.
Well,
You're gonna do so well.
right?
So yeah, and I think that is a really nice transition into ERP for this. I mean, we can
Mm-hmm.
come back to compulsions because there are other things. I think avoidance is so key though to our initial discussion, and the idea is really to say no, no. I'm going to think about this on purpose. I'm going to purposefully contaminate myself instead of trying to avoid this experience of contamination, much like what we talked about with sensory motor OCD.
Right. It's just the bring it on.
Yeah, like bring it into my awareness and hold it there. It's
Right.
fine. It gets to live there. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not going to try and push it away. I don't need to figure it out or what it means or whether or not something bad's going to happen. I'm just going to bring that potential into my awareness and feel whatever anxiety comes up and then continue on about my life
Yeah.
with the anxiety.
I'm going to do my best version of that person's personality.
Yeah. I'm going to really try and imitate that person as much as possible.
I'm curious what variants have you seen with like the personality traits?
So I haven't seen a ton of that, to be honest. I mean, I
Okay.
think there's, like I said, I've seen some with like I'm going to contract my my family member's identity or things like that. But
Yeah.
it sounds like
It's
you've seen more of it. I'd be curious to know about your experience there.
Well, it was one of my first cases, and
Mm,
that's I think why it's like seared into my mind because it was a tough one, but um, ended up being a really happy ending
yeah,
for that person, which was exciting.
love that.
Um, I know. So, anyways, no, I've seen it a few times. I've seen it where it's like they're scared they're going to not be funny, right?
Mm,
Like they're going to lose their humor, and people in class who are not being, they're kind of making jokes that are less than par for them. They are like, I gotta bounce. Like I can't even be in this classroom anymore, and then go home and do tons of rituals around it.
mm,
Um, uh, so this is, the fear of losing touch with reality, right? Like
mm-hmm,
schizophrenia stuff can come on here.
mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I'm near somebody who has schizophrenia or someone who I perceive might have it, and now
I'm going to catch it,
I'm going to catch it because everyone knows schizophrenia is contagious and that
obviously.
you can get it. There's no, yeah,
No, there's
science
no,
behind that or
there's no science. No,
right,
it's no, absolutely. That's where those concentric circles come into play. Right? That's
right.
that it
I've
really
seen it with,
can.
sorry.
No, that it just can sort of cross over with any subtype. Like I think that what you're talking about is like the mental health obsessions, and that
Yeah,
emotional contamination can have some bearing on that subtype, and that if you have POCD and you're watching a film about somebody, right, you might have the
become them.
the fear that you're going to become them or that they're going to like get all of their bad on
Grossness
you.
on you.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
I've
Ew.
seen it in the relationship stuff too,
Mm.
where their primary obsession was not what if I cheat on them per se, but it's what if I'm around this friend who's cheated a lot
Mm.
and it's like gets on me. So the rituals were far more, it was just pervasive around hanging out with them, not with checking themselves
Mm.
and if they were actually like, you know, the person who's scared they're not going to be funny anymore. They're not doing tons of jokes to make sure they're still funny. It
Right.
was just, it's the front end of it, right? It's like
Yeah.
someone else is going to get on me.
Right. Right. Well, and
That
we've
makes
even
sense.
I'm just thinking about, us off screen, that
Let's do
sometimes,
it. It should be
sometimes,
good.
well, no, sometimes you and I will both be like, oh no, did I get my anxiety on you?
Yes, the answer is probably yes.
Always yes,
Yeah.
because let's get anxiety all over each other. This is good
Yeah,
times.
it happens, man.
It does.
Uh, okay. Sorry, I know we're totally going backwards. So we were on obsessions, then we did compulsions. Now we're going into ERP. Or are we still doing what are we doing? Where are we at?
I
What
don't
day
know.
is
I
it?
think we started getting into ERP, but then I think I took us back to compulsions. So I'm taking us off the
I
rail.
went back to obsessions. So
Well, I liked it. I really did. Maybe
um
I did.
anyways, doesn't matter. I got my anxiety on you and we're moving forward. So
Feels so good. So, in terms
so
of ERP, it really is. It's about getting around the person. It's about getting around the item. It's about doing the thing. It's about going to the place. It's about watching the movie, whatever the thing is that you're trying to get away from, so that you don't have the thoughts. Also, can include things like imaginals, mini imaginals. So you have the thought pop in on a reminder several times a day that you might become somebody else. So you make sure that you remember it every once in a while so that you have the opportunity to flex your muscle, to notice the desire to ruminate, to notice the anxiety that's popping in and go, I'm not going to figure that out right now. You're building the I'm not going to figure that out right now muscle. Yeah, big
it's
muscle.
over
We
there
hope.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Another one that I've had to do a few times because I got contaminated um, is that I'd have my clients would be like, okay, well, say for example, one of them's like, well, I'm going to the movies with, this is obviously pre-COVID, I'm going to the movies with my girlfriend, and they don't want to have the thought or anything associated with it, like me,
Yeah.
come into play. And like, okay, what time are you going to the movies? Oh, you know, between 7 and okay, so I'm going to text you.
Mm-hmm.
Ding. Of course, consenting that they're okay with that.
Right.
They have to be willing. I'm not going to just be like randomly inserting, forcing them into
Myself.
an exposure.
Ah.
Um, that's always a fun one, if they're willing. If they're willing,
Yes.
it usually goes really well. Actually, it's funny
Yes.
if you're with a funny therapist. I like to think I'm funny.
You are. You're one of the funniest people I know.
Oh, you are too. This
Oh
morning
man.
was you had a good line. Okay.
Oh, I did?
Anyways,
What was
yeah,
it? Is it
it was a
consumable?
British, it was,
Oh, oh yeah. I remember kind of.
yeah.
Anyway.
Anywho,
Anywho.
so yeah, that's kind of like it's almost like cross contamination, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well then, yeah, there's maybe
It's not a direct hit. You're not telling your girlfriend the exact anxiety, but by proxy through me, you're kind of,
right. You're getting the contaminant all over you. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
And I just happened to see that's very kind of you. You are very welcome. We're really grateful to have the opportunity to talk about this stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
we
It's
we like it.
we do. We do. We like it so much we made a career out of it, as it
Yeah,
turns out.
really into it.
Yep. Yep. So
Um,
what else about emotional contamination?
hmm, I
I don't
remember, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I I lost it, but I feel like I remember Tom talking about this. Tom is our boss, by the way, and
Yes.
he's a great boss. Hey,
Yep.
Tom, if you're
Hey,
watching. Hey,
hey,
Tom Corboy,
Tom Corboy.
that I've worked for my entire adult life. Okay, so I remember him telling me something about having a client back in the day where they were worried they were going to um, become paraplegic, and he would have them go into like stand in the handicap spaces of the park. Do you remember this story? You know how he
No.
tells stories?
No, yeah, but he does tell stories. He was my supervisor for several
Yeah,
years, but I haven't heard this one.
yeah. He taught us everything we know. What can I
Yeah,
say? Um, so I don't know. I mean, again, that's like it's where health meets emotional. Um, yeah,
that
I'm
is really
just
interesting.
because we were
Yeah,
talking about exposures.
definitely. So go stand in the handicap spot. You could go stand. Oh, I just thought of a good one.
Say it. Don't
Let's
you
just
love when that
say,
happens?
what if you're worried about getting anxiety on you? So you go hang out in the waiting room of a
Oh
therapist's office.
yeah, absolutely.
That's
And
good.
in fact, rub your stuff all over it.
So then you can have like a contamination towel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can
Oh, oh,
count.
oh. That's a great one. Another one.
Oh,
I've had clients where they're like, I only wear this shirt and these pants to your session. I'm like, well, you probably shouldn't have told me that because now you know I'm gonna make you.
like put that shirt
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
drawer
right. So
and let it get all over your other clothing.
right, and so a graduated exposure even might be okay. They're gonna wear these special clothes to the session, and now they're gonna go home and they're gonna touch those clothes with the clean clothes,
Hmm.
and then until they're ready to actually wear the new, I want to see you in a snazzy new outfit, folks. So,
Totally. And I think even sometimes people with contamination concerns generally will sort of sequester the clothing when they get home. So maybe even
right.
an initial stage would be I'm going to take off, I'm going to change, but I'm
Hmm.
going to put these clothes in my closet with my other clothes. They don't have to touch.
You're
They're
right.
just going to be in the closet so they get their essence out into the air around the other clean clothes. And then the next step maybe like, okay, well, I'm going to touch the clean or the contaminated ones with one hand, and then I'm going to touch my clean clothes with the same hand, and then I'm going to right like, and then
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. There's so many graduated,
mm-hmm.
and Lauren brings up such an important part in exposure and response prevention is that so many people come in and they're like, well, all my things are 10 out of 10 anxiety, and I can't just do this exposure. It's like, well, hold on.
Yeah,
Because there are so many millions of steps in between. And even if you come up with one step less and that's too hard, I guarantee you we will find another step.
yeah, yeah,
Like we can
and
break it down.
limiting in terms of other steps, limiting how many compulsions you're doing is one step. Right,
Yep.
you can do partial RP. You can actually not do response prevention. You can delay the response. There's
Mm-hmm.
another step. So yeah, there's all sorts of everyone can do ERP.
Yep.
Yep,
Yes, ma'am, they can.
show can.
I like to trick my mind and be like, all right, well, look at the clock. So if I still want to ruminate on this in 30 minutes, like it's 10, I got to do it. You
Yeah,
don't have to. I'm not willing to let it go. Then I will. But I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it for a very short period of time. And then I have to be willing to then just put it away.
yep, yep. No, that's right on the money. I love that you brought that up because what's interesting about that too, based on the research, especially um, brain lock. Why do
What?
oh my God, what is his name? Jeffrey Schwartz.
Oh, I
Thank
didn't
you.
know you were looking for the author.
Thanks, brain. Um,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
buddy.
So Jeffrey Schwartz, he did a lot of brain scans on people with OCD, and found that the caudate nucleus is getting stuck and that it's telling the orbital frontal cortex that something's off or wrong. But he found that after 15 to 20 minutes of refocusing your attention on something that's meaningful, i.e., like not doing compulsions and then gardening.
Right. I think that's the example he uses.
Yeah, he uses
Yeah.
gardening, playing an instrument.
I just
There's one
remember
other
the
one.
gardening one.
Yeah, I like gardening.
I
I
mean,
don't
too.
have a garden, but I'd
That's
like
the
to
dream,
garden.
friend.
That's the
Let's
dream. Let's
peace
get
and
a
love,
garden.
man. Anyways,
So he found that the caudate nucleus gets
weird.
unstuck and you stop feeling so anxious about it. So if you give yourself the space, if you say, okay, even saying, you know what, tomorrow, if
Tomorrow.
I still really want to think about this, if I still think it's a good use of my time, then I can revisit this, maybe. But for now, this is off limits. I am too anxious. I'm not going to have a productive conversation around this anyway.
Not gonna end well.
No, not, and maybe not going to end, unfortunately.
Yeah. Shoot, I know. And also, it just, again, what I think you're talking about in another way of saying it is you're breaking the cycle in a really basic form. We're just stopping the cycle instead of impulsively doing a compulsion,
Yeah.
right? It's like nothing requires that fast of a response.
Yeah.
Nothing. And so to say, all right, just even a few seconds can break up the OCD cycle or
Yeah.
the OC cycle. And it gives your prefrontal cortex a chance to kind of come online, which is executive functioning, language, rational thinking. And you can do a little cognitive work and say, so you're telling me that if I sit here and I ruminate on this thought, that I'm going to find an answer? Really? Because last time I did that, it didn't end well. So
Right.
you are able to rationalize a little better because your amygdala turns down the volume a bit, depending
Yeah.
on how long you're waiting. But
Yeah, and sometimes the maybe the amygdala doesn't turn down the
no,
volume on
that's
the
true.
anxiety, but you if you're able to access your executive functioning, your rational brain, you can at the very least say, okay, I know what makes sense rationally, and I'm going to take that action even though it feels terrifying
Mm-hmm.
to do so.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah,
It's true. Okay.
that's true. Should we look at some questions?
Sure. Let's
Okay,
do it.
hold please. Oh, so somebody asked what is emotional contamination OCD? I think we've covered that. I hope we've covered that.
Yeah, please let us know.
And then let's see. Does this relate to germs? Like something that you think is gross touches an object or something, and then that object is contaminated, so either, and then it drags off, unfortunately. It's not the full question. So I think we kind of touched on that too. Would you agree?
Yeah. Around
It's
the real contamination versus emotional.
exactly. So if your contamination is so severe you can't do ERP without passing out, suggestions.
Wait, say that again?
Oh, wait, hold on. Hold.
If ERP is so
If your contamination is so severe you can't do ERP without passing out, suggestions.
without passing out, like
Right.
fainting,
Yeah.
I would consult a doctor if there's any physical.
Yeah.
I've had a client who's had this and need doctors on board for that one.
Very important to get some sort of
Rule
physical
out.
assessment and rule out any sort of underlying condition.
It can
If
be
you,
like a vagal response or whatever it is. I
yeah.
forget what it's called.
No, I think that is what it's called. Smart. Basal bagel.
Sometimes it happens. It's because you contaminate me in a good way
Oh my God. You're
with
welcome.
your brain. Yeah, your Mensa is coming through
For the record, I'm not part of Mensa. I'm not that smart.
but I think you could be right there.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
Do it, please.
Um, but in terms of when we work with somebody who has a severe reaction to ERP, sorry,
Uh-oh.
My
What's happening?
phone is telling me I have low battery because
Okay.
it's being special, even though I charged it all morning. Acceptance.
Acceptance.
So
Here we are.
here we are. So what was I saying? The contamination. No. Oh my God.
You were saying
Oh, the
when people
fainting.
have, yeah,
Like if somebody has an extreme reaction to an exposure, that may mean a couple of things. One, and I'm not talking about the fainting. Yes, to your point, you got to get the fainting checked out. It's a physiological symptom. But if we're talking about largely just having a really heavy response, that you can take it slowly, right? You can, like we were talking about earlier, really break it down into component parts so that you're getting a sense of mastery over time too. When you realize that you can hold out and not do a compulsion, that's a very powerful moment.
even if, here's a ringer here. Even if you do faint, guess what? You survived it.
Big caveat, as long as
As long as there's no physical, that's why I said out of the
I
gates.
you nailed that, girl.
Only because I've had experience with it and it was
Yeah.
serious.
Yeah. No, you do. You got to get those things checked out.
Yep.
But ultimately, if your doctor says, well, you just have a tendency to faint when you get super anxious, and that's what's going to happen. We probably set you up in a way that's physically safe so that if you faint, you're not like going to bonk your head or anything. But
Right.
okay, then you get anxious and then you faint.
And usually, when that is the case, I think it's a lot related to, like, there's panic disorder involved and there's the fear of the physical symptoms of anxiety and what if I can't,
Yep. Yep.
So,
By the way, I'm seeing some questions coming through, but I'm not getting to them. So if you have a question, just throw it in the question mark box because I don't
right.
want to waste everybody's time by trying to scroll through and get all the questions. But we want to answer them if we
Yeah.
can. Okay. Um, could you discuss the cause of ROCD? Well, that's not really in the context of this sort of subtype. We did do recording on ROCD. You can check that out on Instagram TV on either of our pages, or you can go to our YouTube channel. So, which is purely OCD if you Google or if you go on YouTube. Do exposures ever work for a while and then become compulsions because you use them to help settle intrusive thoughts? Yup.
Yeah. Pretty straightforward. Yes, I think
They
that
can.
person had and I knew, right? Like they were listening to the fact that, yeah, I'm probably doing this to get some instant relief.
Yep.
Or if you're
Yeah.
doing it to try to ward off any potential, right?
Yep. Yeah. I think that's where the aim of ERP becomes so central.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Because if you are thinking, oh, I'm going to do ERP so that I stop feeling so anxious about this, then you are going to do ERP compulsively. If you're
Right.
right, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say there's something, like, I don't know if you said it last time we met or the time before we were talking about mindfulness. Like, if you're doing mindfulness, like, properly and
Right.
correctly, then it can't be compulsive because, the foundation of it is not to get the relief. And
It's
I
just to
think
accept.
the same, yeah. And the same is with ERP. The goal is to present a trigger without doing mental ritualizations, right? You're trying to bring on a fear. Whether you have a fear response or not is kind of irrelevant, but then to then resist the compulsive behavior.
Yep.
So you can't really, if you're doing it correctly, right? It can't be
Yeah.
compulsive.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. What is ERP? That's important. Exposure and response prevention, which is the gold standard treatment for OCD. But I will say, from my vantage point, I think Kelly probably feels the same way too. The most important part of ERP is actually RP,
Mm-hmm.
because
Right.
so the response prevention, the not doing compulsions part. Because even if you just do response prevention when you get triggered in your everyday life, that's going to help you a lot in your recovery.
Definitely. In fact, I've seen a lot of clients, not a lot, but a handful, where they've done a lot of the work on their own just from removing compulsive behavior, but there's, a handful left that they can't push through on their own, or they're just stuck a little bit. And that's where, I can come in and Lauren can come in and be like, oh, here's some active exposures to do. Now let's try to resist the compulsive behavior.
Right.
But
Because it's
you
kind
can
of,
get, yep.
go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, because
I
it's
was finished.
ERP is just it's got that bring it on quality, so it's really giving you a little bit more confidence around the experience of anxiety and intrusive thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has the ability to, no, I think that that's the main thing, because I don't know, oftentimes passive exposures are far more anxiety provoking
True.
than the active ones. And I have clients even right now, I think we've talked about this, that do not, they don't respond to active exposure work. It has to happen in the
In
wild, so to
vivo.
speak. Yeah.
Yeah, totally in
Yeah.
the wild.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm going to go back to our questions.
I mean, there's a few good ones in the feed if you want me to read.
Yeah. If you want to look through, and this is an interesting one.
Okay.
Can you talk about how to deal with negative or toxic people at work and feeling like their energy brings you down by the end of meetings?
Ooh. Well, so that could be OCD or not, depending on, right? I
Yeah.
mean, listen, when we're around people who are negative, it's going to put us in a poopy mood.
It does. It does put us in it can put us in a
It
bad mood.
can.
I think this is where potentially, and I'm going to be sort of thinking this through on the fly, so bear with me, but
I
I
love
think
that's the only way to be.
all on the fly, sister. So I think there's the potential for identity to get involved here as well, with the discussion of empaths and highly sensitive people, that there's an identity around, I really pick up other people's emotions, that's like seen as positive, right? Like you're sensitive, you
Hmm.
sort of absorb other people's emotional experiences, that can keep people from making the choice to disengage from rumination and to just accept the feelings, which then won't last as long, right? Because without the thoughts fueling them, right? Like if you're not continuing after a meeting, for instance, to think about the meeting and how awful the people were, then you're unlikely to continue to feel
Those
crummy.
awful
Yeah. Right?
people.
I don't know. Do
Hmm.
you know what I mean though? Like I think that there's that sense of, I don't know why it didn't come up for me sooner in this, but I do think that like I'm an empath, I'm a highly sensitive person, right? Like that. Not saying that those things don't exist. Obviously, there are people who are more empathic than others and who do tend to take it on.
Yes. And it's
But
hard
yeah,
to not. And that's like kind of going off what you said, is just choosing to drop it, right? Drop the rumination around it and
hmm,
just experience the feeling of it. Oh, isn't that interesting? Let's get curious about this feeling.
yep,
And just, and it always a light curiosity. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Not like, oh, I gotta figure it out.
Right.
We don't do that.
More of like a, huh. And it's more about
Isn't that
the
interesting?
process of it than it is about the content of it. I'm not trying to
That's
figure
right.
out the content. I'm just trying to understand what it is to live with anxiety or to be in the presence of anxiety.
Yeah, isn't that interesting how it just did that when that person said this? Huh. Like
Yeah.
the observation stance.
Yeah. Yeah. That you're just observing the whole mechanism figuring itself out.
Hmm. Also boundaries too. If this
Yeah.
is unrelated to OCD.
That is true. That is
Okay.
very true.
Because
Is
we are
saying
therapists too. So
we
boundaries.
are we are actually therapists.
We are.
Um, yeah, and I just saw sexual orientation OCD. We do know about that, and we actually have an episode on that as well. So
Hmm.
if you are interested in looking that up on our Instagram TV, on both of our pages, and also on our YouTube channel. Um, so shall I go on to the next
Yes.
question? Let's see. Hmm. What are ERP options for happy memories or objects or places that you don't want to get contaminated? That's another good question.
What was the first part though? What did you say?
What are ERP options for happy memories or objects or places that you don't want to get contaminated?
Yes. Oh man. Oh
I
man.
know. I have bad news. Do you want to be the bearer?
No, you do it.
Yeah, it's the
Because I'm
answer
going
is
to
to
hear it and take it myself.
I think it's to contaminate them on purpose.
Yep.
Oh, it's so
Mm,
hard. It's like you want to keep these things, but it's also different from regular contamination OCD, right? And I think I was reading recently, and I totally agreed with this. It was in Grayson's book, Freedom from OCD, that
love that book.
it's such a good book. It's on Audible, and I've been listening to it. But
I'm
it's,
happy.
yeah, yeah. But it, the idea that it can be easier in some ways to recover from those forms of OCD because once you've taken the cat out of the bag, there's no putting it back in, right? You
That cat
have
is
to commit.
loose.
That cat is loose. And the issue of trying to clean the contamination or address the contamination, it's going to take so much time that the negative consequences of that are just people will say, screw it, I'm just going to be contaminated versus where, other types, it's there's this promise of being able to figure it out somehow, or that I think it's just not as pervasive when you do the exposures. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yes. I mean, I think I live with this a lot. Not so much anymore, but at the beginning stages of obsessional thinking with my daughter was, bringing up past memories that were negative and then having them around her and
Mm.
contaminating her in some way. Because she's the good, right? And I don't want to get her dirty
Yeah, you don't
in any way.
fit in.
So yeah, I get that, man. Do I get it?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
guess what? I don't have it anymore because I did let the cat out.
yeah.
Who let the cat?
Meow.
Oh
I
boy, I
almost
need
said
some
woof.
sleep.
Girl, you're doing great.
Didn't sleep
Yeah,
last night. Just everyone, in
I
case
can't even
anyone
believe
cares to know,
you are killing it. I don't know how you do it.
when your
I would be
child is sick, you don't sleep. Anyways, go
crazy.
ahead.
I don't know where I was going, but um, yeah. So that I think that we did
Great
cover
question.
it. That's a great question. And also another reminder that we do try to keep these things fairly specific to each of the subtypes. So if we're not getting to your question, part of that just may be that we're trying to really focus on this type of OCD. Um, I'm looking through. I'm not sure
I have
that
one
there.
here.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to?
So this person says, so fear of turning into someone evil, but not fear of turning, sorry, fear of turning into someone evil, but not fear of currently being evil. Is that emotional OCD, not harm OCD, or POCD, or is it both?
Can you say the first part of that one more
Yeah.
time?
Fear of turning into someone evil,
Mm-hmm.
but not fear of currently being evil. Is that emotional OCD, not harm OCD or POCD, or is it both?
Depends.
Yeah. And again, it's OCD is what it is.
Yeah. One diagnosis.
Yeah, it's just one
F42.2, baby.
mixed
That's
obsessional thinking and thoughts. Yeah.
that's the ICD-10 code for anyone who's counting.
Yeah. Anyone who
Um,
wants a diagnosis code, there it
yeah,
is for your
there it
insurance.
is. There it is.
Um, so yeah,
So, yeah, I think that if you're worried that you're going to catch it from something else or from watching something, then it might be an emotional contamination. If you're just afraid that you might snap one day and become that way, that's probably, we would put that more in the harm or even the mental illness obsessions category.
or you could have obsessions about both too.
Totally. It's true.
Actually, probably more so than not, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
This is
So,
live, by the way, because somebody asked. I did see that. Mhm. Anything else that you're seeing come up about
Yeah.
specifically?
So someone said, can you have OCD strictly in your head without anything physical? Seems like it's all in my head, but don't do any physical compulsions or repetitions. Correct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is where, people talk about pure obsessional OCD. I promise you, though, there's likely some physical behaviors of avoidance of some sorts
Mm-hmm.
that's going on. But yes, for the most part, a lot of the OCD we treat is that,
Yep.
is lots of mental ritualization that
Yep.
you can't see. It's very covert ops.
Very covert ops. It's so true. I think
Seal 6, Seal 7,
SEAL Team 7, a 6. 6.
6.
Yeah. The the only thing that often comes up in those subtypes too is reassurance seeking. Not always, but a lot of the time the mental compulsions and the reassurance seeking are more pronounced in that area. One thing I was going to say though is this might be a good moment to just remind people about what obsessions are and what compulsions are, because I think that that really highlights the why the compulsions don't need to be physical. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Should
Yeah.
we get
What do
into
you,
it?
yeah. So if we start with obsessions, these are the thoughts, feelings, urges, sensations that we experience that are unwanted. They're upsetting. They tend to be repetitive. So they'll keep coming into your head. They've got this sort of sticky quality to them. So they're difficult to shake. And everyone has these. Every human, what's the stat? 99% of people
I
have intrusive thoughts and the other 1% are lying or something like
Yeah. Yeah,
that.
yeah. Right. Exactly.
So
With
that's
a healthy functioning brain, right?
right.
So,
Right. That's a side effect of being alive, is having thoughts that we don't like, really.
mm,
And these thoughts tend to cause anxiety, discomfort, doubt, uncertainty, and that leads to compulsions.
compulsions. So compulsions are any behavior, anything
Even
mental,
invisible ones. Sorry.
even the invisible ones.
Even
They're
them.
gonna the Seal 6 versions.
Hmm.
So we break it down at our center as overt. So those are observable. Those are the things that are like checking. It's like anything we can visibly see with our eyes.
Or
Um,
washing.
or washing, counting. And then there's the covert, which is the covert ops. It's like no one really can tell unless you're an OCD therapist. And in that case, we likely can tell you're mentally ruminating in
Usually you get
session.
real quiet
Hmm.
and
And
your eyes kind of are like
what'd you say?
that.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen both of us do it on a live. I'm sure.
I'm sure if you go
Um,
back through.
yeah. And then there's the reassurance seeking, asking others, hey, do you think this is okay? Do you think I'm okay? Do you think this is okay?
Hmm.
Um, and and then there's the avoidance, the big one, right? Is just avoiding anything potential trigger of any sort. Um,
Yep.
so yeah, I think that's pretty much. So, anyways, we're doing those. I forgot to say this. We're doing those to neutralize the obsession,
Hmm.
right? So we're
Yep.
trying to get rid of it and say, don't do it. Don't have this feeling. Don't have these thoughts. They're bad. We can't handle them. Something
Right.
bad's going to happen. And we're saying, why don't we kind of like test the waters and test the theory here and just kind
Yeah.
of loosen the grip, see if you kill someone or not.
Just
Give you a
get
knife in my
curious.
office. Right. Just kidding.
Yeah. Well,
Aggressive.
and it is aggressive. I like it. But all of that, going back to this person's question about having only mental, non-observable OCD, that's where the answer is yes, because you're just doing all these different behaviors toward the same end, which is trying to get certainty. You're trying to make sure that you're not a serial killer, that you're not a pedophile, that you are in the right relationship, that
That you're
you
funny enough,
are funny enough, that you are, etc., clean enough.
that you're human and this
Right?
is real.
that you're currently living in a reality. Yeah. There
Right.
are all of these things that you can try to figure out. And none of those things really need any sort of external, except for maybe if your compulsions are hand washing or checking or, like a lot of these things, it's all about trying to figure out your internal experience.
Yep. And just to add to that is, I think there's a high expectation when people come into the office and they think, oh, I'm going to just get in there, do exposures and be great, right?
Yeah.
But I think we got to really give some time and stress the importance of the fact that we got to build insight into what's going on.
Yep.
Because a lot of times people aren't even aware of the mental ritualizations until even far later into treatment. Like, oh, wow, I'm neutralizing that fear.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's so automatic. So we have to build insight, which takes cognitive restructuring and it takes mindfulness and it takes acceptance and all of that before we
Yeah.
get into the fun stuff,
Yeah. Before we
the real
dive into the
sexy
deep dive.
exposure stuff.
So sexy.
The bells and whistles, though.
Yeah, I'm just gonna like, I don't know, think
Right.
about the idea that I might be a murderer, have that thought pop in, that's
I
sexy.
know. But I do love when clients come in. They're like, "I'm so excited to do exposures." Like that's exciting when that happens. But I'm always like, "Okay, well, don't get too excited because
Yeah.
we
Whoa, whoa,
gotta
whoa.
stow a few things away here real quick."
Yep. Yep.
So
No, that's
yeah,
that's so true. And I think that one thing to remember, just bouncing off of that, is that we are trying to reduce your symptoms, but we can't view your anxiety
as
and
the
your
problem.
thoughts as the problem or as symptoms. I mean, they are, but they're also symptoms of being alive. It's the process of trying to neutralize those experiences that are the symptoms that we want to pull back on that actually detract from life ongoing. Because thoughts and feelings, they don't actually have to slow you down substantially.
And I think that that brings a bigger point to, those are the clients that are like they're on a mission to beat their anxiety into submission, and we aren't going to do that. So me intentionally slowing them down is actually medicine for them because
Yeah.
that's the response prevention.
Yeah. That's so true. Any other things that we want to try and cover? Any other questions that you saw coming up? I know we're probably rounding out up on the
Yeah,
hour.
we are. And
Yeah.
I do have a client, but
Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate it. And I don't know that we have a topic picked out for next week, but we will figure one out. If anyone has any desires for us to cover something that we haven't, we also have a list, so you can direct message either of us about that, and we will do our best to cover it.
yeah. And also, I'd like to say, Lauren,
Hmm.
since I have you here, that per- perhaps once we
Perhaps.
go through the subtypes, is that because some people had asked, like, how do you support a family member? It's like, I think Lauren and I in the past have talked about we will eventually run out of subtypes, and
For sure.
we'll talk about things that, we can't discuss now, but we have an agenda.
Yes,
We'll get to
absolutely.
it.
So yeah, and talking about OCD in all sorts of different contexts, and also perhaps revisiting some of the subtypes if there are
Yes.
specific questions within them, because there are, and definitely areas to be explored. So
Yes.
thank you to our sponsors and
Yes.
OCD. We really appreciate that. And anything else?
All the great work they're doing.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So,
And
yes,
they're
on that,
at Treat My OCD is their Instagram handle. So check them out there too.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
do that. And we will see you on the flip side. Try not to take your thoughts too seriously,
Yeah.
or the feelings.
Yeah. Really
Kind of,
anything.
really
Most
just don't
things.
take things seriously.
Yeah. Try not to for the most
Except
part.
for cats, because they might,
They're serious.
yeah, mind staring at me. Okay, I know
It's
your
gonna
phone's
murder
about
you.
to die.
Okay.
I will see you, everyone.
All
We will
right.
see you.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.